Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene, and tonight we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, flowers. I like to say that it was my entry, quote, drug into the plant world is flowers. And with me is Amber Villarreal. She is a flower farmer, and she goes by the Instagram handle Redhead Flowerbed. And she is based not too far from me in the Sacramento region. And that alone could be a challenge for flower gardening. So one, just being a flower farmer has its challenges. Two, in a climate like ours, extra challenging. So we're going to talk about how she got her start, of course, what her practices are, her favorite flowers, ones that are her problematic flowers, and any tips that she could give to us just home flower growers. So Amber, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here.
So it's really sort of the first warm day of the year. So I'm sure you were out and about for many, many hours out in the garden today.
Yeah. Definitely. I don't do so well in the heat. I'm Scottish descendants and was meant to be in cold and rain. So I tend to stack a lot of my farming for spring and fall.
Okay.
To try to stay out of the heat as much as possible.
No, summertime. If I'm not I try not to be in my garden. So I can't imagine if farmers you have to be in. So your heritage is Scottish. And I usually ask people, how did you get into farming, gardening? A lot of people, their parents or grandparents did. Sometimes they just, like me, just found a love that they, enjoyed. Any particular sort of background story that got you into farming or flower growing?
Yeah. So I started out as a kid. I was part of not a like commercial agriculture, but I spent a lot of time with my great grandparents and my grandparents. They were, babysitters when we weren't in school, and they both lived on large acreage, 2 to 2.5 acres, within the city limits here in Sacramento.
Oh, okay.
And we always had gardens. We always had fresh vegetables and fresh canned vegetables. So I grew up with the whole array of veggies and never really turned anything down, except for beets. Beets are the one thing that I just absolutely abhor and will never like. But so I grew up, playing outside, running barefoot in the dirt all the time. Flowers kind of came about a little bit before the pandemic, 2016, 2017. My grandmother was getting much older, and it was getting to that kind of awkward point where I wanted to call her every day, but I didn't want to be like, hey, I want to make sure you haven't fallen and you can't get up. And she was also, at the time, she was on 2.5 acres, and it was by herself. It was just way too much. So my husband and I kind of started looking around at different crops that we could maybe grow on the side on her property to kind of give us a reason to be in contact with her daily in a not so invasive way. So, we could go check on the property, and she had 2 gates. So we could go in the side gate and not bug her at all, or we could, go knock on the door and make sure she was okay. And we considered hops at first, and went to a grower seminar out in Sonoma on that. Decided that was a big no-no for our area because they just need so much water.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think a lot of people have thought of hops. I've had friends when, they come, they're like, oh, you should grow hops. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the water issue.
Yeah. They grow really well wild, just, at certain parts of the river. But that's because they're down by the river.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So eventually I think I ended up with the honey festival that happens every year in downtown Woodland. And there was a lady selling flowers there, bouquets, and they were just the most gorgeous bouquets I had ever seen. They were flowers that I'd never really seen before. And it was, she's now a friend and she's moved on. I think she's in Minnesota now. Her name was Katie. Flower Mama was her Instagram and business name. But I was so drawn to her bouquets, and I started talking to her and following her on Instagram and maybe kind of stalking her. And then I ended up finding Florette, who's a very popular, flower farmer on Instagram, and was hooked. I started planting seeds, started planting flowers on my grandma's property. And then I was like, well, I've got to find somewhere for these to go, and started giving them out to friends and taking them to work. At the time, I was working at UC Davis at the vet school.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I work at UC Davis, so you were very close to me. Yeah. So you grew flowers, so you started just growing them for the love of growing them, and then you decided, I'm giving all this away. Maybe I should do something with it. Is that how it came about? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was, maybe I should do something with it. Maybe I should, do a little, side hustle. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody went crazy for flowers. Because we were trying to do something to connect with people that we loved, that we couldn't actually see. It's when DoorDash became big, and, all the delivery services. But the flowers just went crazy locally, in addition to, because we were just wanting to send people flowers more often to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I love you. I miss you. There was this huge disruption in the trades, in most of the flowers, coming from either the Mediterranean area or, up from Colombia and Ecuador. So business went crazy good, and I thought, maybe I'll make this full time. And it kind of coincided with a little bit of work burnout, with career burnout too. And I made the switch to having the flower farm being my full-time income. I'm kind of now honestly lulling back the other way. I've really ramped down production, and I'm really focusing more specifically on that spring and fall season, like I'd said before.
Yeah, just a side note, I saw where you're venturing into, and I think this sort of coincides with flowers, because you said you were particularly sort of drawn to the end of life celebrations flowers. I think you said that sort of was rewarding to be part of that, people's celebration of life. And am I wrong that you're moving into sort of the end of a life doula role?
That you're not wrong in that. That is definitely something that I am extremely passionate about. My career from college path, and what I was doing at UC Davis, I work in the veterinary pathology field. So that's processing all of the tissues and tumors and necropsies and stuff like that. So I've always been around death and remains in a scientific way. And I've been my family's death doula. So basically, like a death doula is a non-medical support staff, just like a birthing doula would be.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Is my friend is actually a vet pathologist. She works for she's in Davis, but she works for a private company, a drug company. And she just sends me pictures of flowers she's grown all the time. So I think it's people who work with that, maybe in such a sterile environment, maybe with death, absolutely need to see something beautiful in life. So maybe they're drawn to flowers that way. So maybe, you're like, I need to get out of this lab. I need to see something pretty. Let me grow flowers. So, it makes sense.
Yeah. It's definitely that connection with nature. Whenever you're whenever you're in a really heavy science field and in a lab all day, you get so ungrounded.
Yeah.
And for me, it breaks my heart a lot of time to see all the waste that it's necessary, but it has to happen, all the gloves and the plastics and stuff like that have to happen whenever you're in a science field. And I'm like, I need to balance myself out and go outside and touch grass and grow things to make my nervous system regulate.
Yes. Well, let's talk then about like your spring and fall. So spring, when do you prep for your spring flowers? So I imagine when you say spring, you sell spring flowers. So when do you prep? Do you have to prep in fall? Some of the stuff earlier, later? And what are your flowers that you do for spring?
So in our area, spring flowers begin in the fall, for sure. They begin even as early as July, depending on how long the seeds need to get up to size to be transplanted out. But milestones for getting crops in the ground are usually the beginning of September and October. And then some other things can kind of trickle out through the winter time. But I want to try to get as many of my cold hardy annuals out and in my fields by the end of October at the latest.
Okay.
Because they can take a little bit of frost and they'll be totally fine. And we ramp up in our temperatures so quickly in the springtime that the only way that you can get decent stem length on a lot of flowers in our area is to start them in the fall. That way they can kind of, eke along. They get a little growth, put some leaves on when it's still warm in September, October, and then they can go dormant and then they can be ready to, really grow gangbusters as soon as we start getting sun and sometimes as early as January. But
so you start them by seed in flats, I imagine, in a greenhouse.
So I have, we have a sunroom.
Okay.
I'm not a big enough operation that I have a full outdoor greenhouse. I usually only have about a quarter of an acre in production at any one time.
It seems small, but it's actually quite large if you have to work that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So we have a sunroom that's large enough that and I've got stainless steel racks and can load up all the flats on there. A lot of the spring flowers though are bulbs. We're talking like anemones and ranunculus and tulips, things that can just get plunked into the ground, or some of them like ranunculus and anemones, you can do a little pre-sprouting to make sure that they're actually going to produce and they're not going to rot out.
Do you have like perennial beds like your daffodils? Do you grow them as sort of a perennial bed, or do you start them over as well?
They stay in perennial beds.
Okay.
Sometimes, depending on how wet we get, I'll have a crop rot out and replace them. I've also got a mild addiction to them, so I'm always buying at least one new case of daffodils every year, just to add one more in to try it, because there's so many varieties beyond just the standard yellow one that everybody knows.
I was backpacking last year and we took a Zero, which is a non-hiking day to resupply, and it happened to be in the town of Julian down in San Diego, and they had their daffodil festival. So I walked into the showroom, and of course every single one I'm like, oh, I want that one. Oh, I want to grow that one. Oh, I want to grow. I mean, it was just hundreds and hundreds of different daffodils. So amazing. So pretty. So.
Yeah. And the smells on them too are unique. They don't all smell the same.
So let's see. So you got bulbs, anemones, tulips, daffodils. What was I going to ask? Do you plant do you grow snapdragons? Do you plant those in the fall as well?
You would if if you were going to grow them. I have had to transition away from snapdragons.
Okay.
They are really susceptible to a fungus called rust.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's my understanding, anyways, that once you kind of get it on your farm, unless you really want to go gangbusters with the fungicides, you're not going to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah. I get it on. I just grow, a few snapdragons here, but when it gets rust, it just decimates the whole plant. So I just, pull it out.
Yeah. So I've transitioned away from snapdragons, and in their place, I grow foxglove.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you grow that as a spring crop. I know it blooms late, so it's a biennial technically.
Technically, but you can. There are varieties that will be first year blooming.
Okay, interesting.
And when you get them in the fall time, if as long as they get enough time, so those are the ones where you're starting the seeds in probably like late July, August.
Okay.
The flower the plant will leaf up, and it'll get beefy enough that it thinks it's had a full season by the time it gets cold in December, January. And then in the following March, they really start to put on growth. And I'm getting my first stems now from stuff that I put in last year. And they're 3 feet tall, if not taller.
Nice. Okay. So that's pretty. I didn't even think, I never think about foxglove as being a cut flower.
Yeah.
It's
a great cut flower.
Wow.
As long as you don't have pets in the house.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Or kids who want to eat them too. Yeah. Yeah. But because you see pictures and it's just so pushed as like a summer bloomer, and then it's too hot here for them for the most part. But yeah, that's interesting. Okay. That's fun. So is that pretty much it for spring, or are there a few other things you grow?
There's lots of other things.
Yeah.
There's there's agrostema, there's scabiosas that come up. There's tons of different kinds of ranunculus. There's butterfly ranunculus, and then regular ranunculus. I've got irises, Dutch irises, and some of the rhizomal ones are coming up now.
Yeah. The agrostema just flops on me. And it's short bloom, right? I would get one big bloom and that's it.
Yeah, usually they have like one to two little flowers on them. Sometimes you'll get a second one.
Okay.
But yeah, that's one of those ones where you just kind of, you have to grab a whole handful and just cut them off and just enjoy it as one big tangled mess. They're not really good as like a focal flower.
Yeah. Do you do sweet peas?
Yeah, I do. I've planted them enough that they're now volunteering.
Exactly. People are like, oh, I love sweet peas. How do you grow them? Like, you plant them once and then you let them go where they want to go, I guess. They do revert, or one becomes more dominant. So if you want more, I'm always like, it always seems to revert back to the Cupanii one, which is pretty. But if you want different ones, I find that I have to seed those, else one becomes more dominant.
Yeah. And then another big one that I really love are Iceland poppies.
Okay. Do those, I've never been, they make good cut flowers. Okay.
You have to do, so they have a hollow stem. They're kind of like dahlias. The dahlias will need this kind of a treatment too. You can sear the ends of them.
Okay.
And it helps push out that air bubble that would get created by cutting the stem.
Oh, interesting.
And makes them last quite a bit longer.
I did not know that. I didn't know that about dahlias. Okay. Good to know. So you harvest, or how early do you harvest in spring? If you were, say, going to go have a farm stand or go to the farmer's market, do you have to harvest that morning?
So typically harvesting happens at least 24 hours in advance. That way the flowers have time to settle in the cooler. So I harvest any time that it's under 80 degrees. After it gets over 80 degrees, you're just damaging the flower, and it's not going to hold up, and it's not going to be able to recoup its what am I trying to say? Sorry. It's not going to be able to recoup, and it's just going to wilt and flop.
Got it. So it's just going to use, it's going to be just basically suffering from the heat and lose some moisture.
Yeah. So I cut everything, and then it goes in the cooler, and it sits at least a day so that they can rehydrate. And then they would come out, and I would make bouquets with them, or, sell them.
Got it. So I imagine, so you farm on a 1/4 acre of it. So I imagine there's overlap. So it's not like, oh, here's spring, get rid of the spring, and then summer, because you're probably already starting your summer crop.
Yeah.
I guess you do fall. You said you do more fall. So for summer, so I do grow. So for me, it's like the cosmos, straw flowers, zinnias. What would you consider those your fall crops?
So straw flowers, I can get. Actually, I treat them as an annual or a perennial, as long as you can keep them without any fungus. They'll keep going for at least 3 years and then get replaced. So I do have some straw flower. This year for summer, the only thing I am growing actually is zinnias. I'm working with UC Davis, the Scope project. They're out at the student farm, and they do a lot of plant breeding. They've got one gentleman that's specifically doing zinnia breeding to see if they can kind of hone down colors and just how the genetics work on them. They also do, I think, tomatoes and wheat, and a few other vegetables. But they have reached out to me the last 2 or 3 years to have me grow them out in mass. So they have an idea of if they actually work on a working farm, because they're trying to better the seeds for farmers and florists.
Got it. So, I love zinnias. They're pretty much just, they're so hardy. They make such good cut flowers, and there's so many different colors. But has the trend been all these muted sort of antique-y, mauve-y brown colors? That seems to be the trend for flowers the last several years. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's due to some really awesome breeding work that a couple of people have been doing. I know Florette, I mentioned before, has been doing it. There's another dear friend of mine, Corey, with Dawn Creek Farm. She really developed this beautiful line of blushes. They're not really, home gardener aesthetics, unless you are going for that muted color. They're more for the wedding industry, because the zinnias are such an amazingly beautiful hardy flower. You can get them in so many petals. They can look almost like dahlias, but they are so much less finicky.
Yes.
So to have a pastel muted tone that they can use in the wedding industry has kind of been game changing for the floral farmer scene.
Yeah, because I personally love them too, but I also like some of the gaudy colors of them too. Because zinnias could be pretty wow in your face, bright colors, and I like that too. But the muted ones, and I was looking at your Instagram, and I think I saw the ones you were talking about. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that one. But that's, like you said, it's usually more of the sort of the wedding trade, not so much marketed to the home grower, who may go like, why is this just sort of this muted color? But I find I like it. I think it's pretty. So so you're gonna do zinnias. You are doing zinnias. Do you do cosmos?
I have in the past. I don't know that I have any plans. I might throw out just a mix of stuff, some cosmos and sunflowers. There we go.
Okay.
Just to have color around for the summertime.
Okay.
And then fall, I go really heavy into heirloom chrysanthemums.
Oh, interesting. Okay. As someone who's not a big chrysanthemum grower, and I sometimes I see them and I go, I should grow those, but I just never do. So when you say heirloom, describe how they look different than sort of just your store bought, like Safeway bought chrysanthemums.
So the ones that are Safeway, general run of the mill, they're usually either pom poms, which are just kind of a little round circle with multiple flower heads per stem, or they're this kind of generic flat, white or purple color. But chrysanthemums can get so elaborate. I think there's at least nine different classes. The Sacramento has a chrysanthemum society, which I'm actually a member of. They meet monthly down at the Shepherd's Garden.
Yep. Every garden club meets there. That is like the place to meet.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's really difficult to get a new variety bred, and so they're cuttings that are floating around and almost like I don't Pokemon cards or Beanie Babies, where you're like trying to trade them to get like a full array of varietals, but they have varieties that incurve, so the petals come up and it makes this big football looking flower, or they come out and just kind of go all curly Q, or they look like spiders or spider mums. Then there's just big fluffy kind of more flat ones that do look exactly like dahlias, and they come in all the shades.
Nice. Yeah, I like the different shades because, sometimes you just are sold, yellow, or it's this brick red, and that's what people know chrysanthemums as. So,
there's so much more than that. I have a tone pink is like it's like a pink with a purple sparkle to it. They're so beautiful. There's so many that have like a shimmer to them. There's champagne colors and darker reds, but they're like that really deep, rich ruby red that you just want to eat. They have so many different colors in all the varietals.
And you grow those as perennials? Are those in a perennial bed?
So there's the way that I do it. There's a mother plant that I keep in a 3-gallon pot. And that one stays kind of in a protected, it's not a greenhouse, but it's a protected shade house space.
Yeah.
And each spring I take cuttings from it and grow those out.
Okay.
And then at the end of the season, I till the whole bed in. And start again.
Got it.
So
okay.
I treat them more like annuals and take new cuttings off of the mother plant every year.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm sure those just sell out like crazy. I'm sure when people see those. Yeah. So that's sort of your focus is going to be on the fall and the spring. And you said you tilled under, so I imagine you have a tractor?
We don't have a tractor. Our property is too small. I have just a little walk behind tiller.
Okay.
That doesn't go too deep. I think the deepest it'll go is 6 inches.
Okay. And then do you lay weed block and then drip line? Or?
I do drip line.
Okay.
I did start out with the landscaping fabric, the really thick stuff and burning holes in it.
Yeah.
But I've found very quickly that with our area, we have Bermuda grass that is impossible to kill. And it just comes up through the weed paper and makes it impossible to pull it up. And move it anywhere. So I've transitioned away from any of the plastic weed mulches, and I just use cardboard and mulch, cardboard and wood chips. And that seems to be doing really well. And it's also really helping the soil because we've got nothing but clay hard pan underneath us. after you get 6 inches down. So it's really helped with just the health of my soil, having all of that organic material going in.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you could do that, that's great. Anytime, I try to grow rows of flowers, it's the bindweed and Bermuda, and everything just comes up. But I didn't even think about, bindweed and Bermuda will just go through that cloth fabric, and I guess it becomes more problematic. So yeah, I guess you're out collecting cardboard pretty early or constant. People know to drop cardboard off for you.
They absolutely do. Our neighbors just bought a new big screen TV, and they're walking down the street with this giant 80-inch box on their head to give to us.
They're like, "Happy birthday! Here's cardboard." You're almost like a cat that way. You're like the cat, and you might fight over the cardboard box. I don't know. So, but no, I mean, that's actually really good to know, because I think, because you keep saying your operation's small, but it's pretty big by doing it by hand. I mean, I'm like picturing my little plot that I'm doing, and it's like, well, I have a friend who grows, and she has a tractor that pulls the weed block, that lays and buries the drip line, and then you sit in the back and you plant. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. But any time you have to do it by hand, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just constant. And then you throw in weeds, and then you throw in I'm guessing you don't have gopher issues?
Fortunately, we have not had gophers. We do have a couple moles that run around, but they don't really do much. They'll just kind of disturb a plant if I have it. My biggest nemesis is we have a giant flock of wild turkeys.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. I live at, Davis is notorious for their turkeys, but I think they're everywhere. So, I mean, I know personally they leave my garden alone, and I don't have snails and slugs because they harvest them all. But they can be quite destructive in a garden, just digging things up. Yeah. So speaking of other pests, smaller pests, I know when I cut a sunflower, there's pests on it. I know when I cut things, there's pests on it, and it's for me. So I'm like, okay, this is fine. How do you, I imagine you don't just douse everything with so much chemicals. It sounds like you're pretty organic. So is it just timing? Is it just having a healthy garden and you're sort of missing the pests, or just putting them in the the fridge for a bit sort of knocks some off? What do you, how do you control pests?
Well, that kind of depends on the pest. I definitely have started with, my farming practices, planting trap crops.
Mm-hmm.
If I know that I really want something, amaranth is a great trap crop, for aphids. I do release beneficial, insects.
Okay.
I do several rounds of minute pirate bugs.
Awesome.
And lacewings.
Okay.
Lacewings.
Yep.
In the springtime to help, and then a couple rounds of nematodes to help with thrips and things like that in the soil. Yarrow is also another really great detractant, and most of the aphids, honestly, they wash off.
Yeah.
That's all I ever do. If I get them really bad, I will cut the flowers, and most of them you can dunk them upside down in a bucket of soapy water and just kind of gently rinse them off, and they're no worse for wear.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you bring in beneficials, which I'm sure they also come in on their own, but yeah, releasing them. I release a lot of beneficial, different ones at the greenhouse. But yeah, and I always tell people, look for them. Don't just assume it's ladybugs, because there's a lot of other things out there that you might think are bad, but they're actually good. So, so what is one flower that is an absolute, well, it sounds like it's daffodils, maybe. Sounds like you're addicted to daffodils or chrysanthemums. Besides snapdragons and the rust problem, what's one flower that you've tried and are just like, forget it. No, not for me.
This one, this is going to be one of those ones that I've never actually heard it pronounced. I've only ever read it. I've grown it. It's either called Nicotiana or Nicotiana.
Yes.
but it's the tobacco plant.
Yes.
There are varieties that are bred, specifically with like different colors. And it's gorgeous, cute little dangly flowers, but it is so sticky.
Yep.
It is just, it's a nightmare to harvest. So I learned my lesson, and I only grew that once and never again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I pronounce it Nicotiana, and it's, the flowering tobacco. And I've planted the white one, and it became a weed. Like, I could not get rid of it. It just, and it's pretty, in certain areas, but I'm like, okay, I don't want you over there, and I don't want you over there. But yeah, I mean, it actually attracts insects. The insects stick to the leaf, so that doesn't look as nice in a bouquet. You're like, here's your bouquet of flowers and some leaves with stuck insects on them. But yeah, I could see how trying to harvest that would not be fun. What's a flower that you have on your list that you want to grow?
Oh, that I want to grow. So they've got some really fancy breeds of echinacea now.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like ones that are fluffy and have multiple petals and are in like these cool, like they're called, apricot fresco or cantaloupe supreme or vanilla puff. And they look so gorgeous. And they're ones that they're tissue culture, can't grow them from seed. So you've got to find a wholesaler and get them from them. And I just haven't bit the bullet on buying them yet and investing in them, but they are on my list.
One flower that I think is just indestructible, looks amazing as a bouquet itself or a filler, is Daucus, the carrot relative that comes in like the muted antique tones. I love that. I mean, I would just grow that. I mean, like, it's amazing how it just comes up, these long stalks. I don't know. That's like my favorite right now, go-to cut flower. So
yeah, that's another one that's similar to sweet peas that you plant it once and you will never have to plant it again.
Exactly. But it's not as bad as, so few of the like Amy Magus, oh my goodness, that thing takes over your whole entire yard. And also, I don't know if this makes a good cut flower, but the polygonum, the kiss me over the garden gate, that thing becomes a horrific weed. It looks pretty in a bouquet. And then amaranth. Some amaranth can take over as well, in my experience.
I've never had. I only grow a handful of varieties, and I've never had it really take over. I think usually because I'm harvesting it before it goes to seed.
Yeah, that's true. And then I saw the other day that someone was growing the Helleborus Lenten Rose as a cut flower. I guess it makes a phenomenal cut flower, but it's so expensive as a plant that it. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was like, it is an amazing flower. That's another one of my like secret passion flowers, and I'm blessed with a decent amount of shade, and so I do have a little patch of Helleborus, and I love them.
They look like they would last forever in a bouquet, and the new varieties are really pretty. I remember gardening, and it was just the green ones. You're like, okay, it's a green flower. It's interesting, but now, I mean, they're phenomenal colors, and I guess the bloom period's relatively short, but each flower lasts forever. So, but I mean, they're expensive because I think they're all trademarked still.
Yeah, a lot of them, especially the double-petaled ones, are trademarked. You can grow them from seed, although they take a really long time. And I don't know if they stay true to form when you grow them out from seed pod. They're one of the first flowers in our area to start blooming. They usually put up flowers the end of January, but they aren't really ready to harvest until mid-March or April. And they're one of the ones that you want to let them grow and set their pods And then you can cut them and they will last weeks and weeks in the vase.
Interesting. Okay. One flower that we sort of touched upon as we were describing other flowers, dahlias. We'll end with dahlias. So just because, I mean, people love them and we always compare other flowers like, oh, that looks like a dahlia. Oh, that looks like a dahlia. I will have good years growing dahlias and I'll have bad years growing dahlias. And I'm sure it's the heat too. Do you grow dahlias? Have you grown them? Do you like them? And what are your favorite types?
Yeah, so I love them. And I also hate them. there's a difficult relationship happening there. I've grown several varieties, and I kind of like you. I'll have a good year, and I'll be like, okay, I'm ordering more of these, and then I'll have a bad year, and then I swear them off. But then they always kind of draw me back in.
Yes, I know.
Totally Tangerine is one of my absolute favorite varieties.
Okay.
It's this really pretty orangey with like purple flares in it that are just like shimmery, and it's a single petal variety that has
yeah. What are the so I know there's of course, as soon as I see this is the largest dinner plate one you could get, I'm like, yeah, I want that one. I want that one. And then I see the cute little pom-pom ones that look fake. And then, what's the one that looks like the petals are curved in? I can't remember the name of those. They're a single petal. They look so, I can't remember.
Are they like the water lily varieties?
Not the water lily. Oh, what are they called? They look like I would draw a picture of a daisy. You center with them the petals. I can't remember. Maybe someone out there screaming, that's what they are. But I mean, all of them are so pretty, and there's so many of them.
Oh yeah, there's it's kind of like chrysanthemums. There's so many tubers, or you can grow them from tubers, you can grow them from seeds, you can grow them from cuttings. There's all the ways to get a hold of them, and they can be really pricey, especially if they're a newly bred variety, and you're paying royalties to the breeder, which absolutely they deserve all the awards for dealing with the finickiness of them. They definitely do better either a little bit more up the hill, like if you're in Nevada City, Grass Valley, that kind of area. It stays a little cooler up there longer. Down here, I have to get them, if I'm going to have them, I have to get them in the ground first thing or leave them in the ground and kind of protect them over winter.
Yeah.
I just do like a heavy layer of mulch and leave them if they're doing okay in the bed that they're in. Let them come up, harvest them, I'll probably get them the end of May, beginning of June. And then in July, when the heat really starts to set in, I give them a hard chop, almost all the way to the ground.
Wow. Okay.
And then keep chopping them back until the end of August. And then let them start growing out in August so that they'll have a last bloom, a fall bloom, like the end of September, beginning of October.
Okay. Yeah. I'm so horrible that way. I'm like, oh, I don't want to cut you. You might flower for me, even though it'll look bad because it's 120 out. Yeah. Mine don't. If they're in the raised bed, they'll come back. But if they're in the ground, the clay's too heavy and I think they rot out. So I don't even think it's the cold. I think for me, it's the heavy clay if they're in the ground. So I just try to put them in the raised beds, but yeah.
Yeah. And they also, they stop putting out blooms once they hit like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
So they don't flower really prolifically anyways. And I've never been able to have a season where I don't get spider mites.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's why I just cut them out, down to tiny little stumps, and just give them lots of water, a little bit of fish emulsion every week, and just baby them through the summer. I put shade cloth over them in the summertime too.
Yeah, I try to grow them on the east side so they're at least just get the morning sun, and then in the afternoon they're not getting the blazing. I don't know. I mean, of course, I'm always going to grow them, but this year at least I went through and I didn't like. I got the catalogs, and I'm like, I'm going to ignore you. I'm not going to buy anymore. So, I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to talk about. So you do a farm stand, and is that at the farm? Is that or?
Yeah. So the farm is our home property, and we
Okay.
are in kind of like a little more rural area, but we're still pretty close to all the grocery stores and busy streets and stuff like that. So I've just got a farm stand at the end of our driveway, and then the rest of our property is gated, so the farm isn't really
Yeah.
open for touring or looking
That's
at.
nice.
We've got
Yeah.
3 dogs that love to pretend like they're guard dogs.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you do sell at farmers markets, and what farmers markets do you tend to go to?
I did last year
Okay.
with not doing summer flowers this
Yeah.
year. I took that off of
Okay.
my plate, and I'm just selling more wholesale directly to wedding event florists, and then also doing like DIY buckets for special orders if people want to do their own flowers. A lot of people want to do like flower bars at baby showers or at their bridal showers or weddings or just a girls' night. So I've got curated buckets that I'll sell.
That sounds much nicer than waking up super early in the morning and going to the farmer's market.
It is.
Yeah, that's much nicer. So that sounds like you've got a good little gig there. Well, I'm glad you're still flower farming. I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean, people think it is glamorous. They see my friend is just follows Florette, and I'm constantly hearing about it. And all I can think about, I'm like, that's so much work. That is so much work. It's a lot of work. And I mean, sure, you get to be surrounded by beautiful flowers, but it's a business. It's still a business, and it's a business that's the mercy of not only the economy, the climate, the environment, and all it takes is one little pest too. I mean, it could be a different pest or anything, a broken pipe, and then you don't catch it in time. So, kudos to you for doing it, because, I've always thought in the back of my mind, oh, if I didn't work there, I'd be a flower farmer. But I don't know. I don't know if I think as I get older, I'm like, want to do less physical work. So I don't know if I want to gear up to do more. So, but if people want to buy flowers from you and they're local, they could find you on Instagram. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Instagram. I have a website too.
Okay.
Redheadflowerbed.com.
Okay. So Instagram, and then website. And so thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Amber, for being on. And until next time, everyone, happy gardening.